Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Infernal difficulty of the Coliseum. I'm going to show you my clears for all 5 elements, where we're of course going to get the time limit endeavor, we're going to do deathless clears, and we're going to have all on element teams, all on element dragons. No off-element or mono-shadow shenanigans, as much as that's kind of the most efficient way to do this, especially for those who happen to have Grace or, say, Gala Alex. We're going to play it the traditional way, enjoy it, have fun with it, but obviously any way that you choose to play this, I hope that you enjoyed this mode. This was a pretty cool surprise, a pleasant surprise, and I hope that this is something that is sustainable and comes back in the future. It seems to correspond to one of the 2 types of modes that in the 1.5 year anniversary update were mentioned to us as modes that would recur every month or so and alternate. They said that there was going to be some type of wave-based mode and some type of defensive battle mode. So this could be the wave-based one. I would love to see it come back. I was surprised at how many characters they used here and how flavorful it gets. I love the combinations of characters. It feels very, very fun. And for the first 3 clears here, I'm going to do the easier elements first, so I'm starting with my Shadow team, then my Flame team, and then my Water team. I was going into these blind and was able to take these down on my first attempt, but obviously that did mean things got a little bit dicey, like you saw there with my HP on my Nefaria and Heinwald. Ultimately, for this, I think regen healing is a lot better than one-shot healing. It's something that can keep you alive despite some of the mechanics causing sustained damage or flurries of damage. So Heinwald may not be the best choice for us here, but I just wanted to use him. I didn't really want to use Grace. I wanted to give it a shot with him, and he was doing well on Lunatic before, so I figured it would probably be fine for Infernal. But Infernal has quite the combination of both damage that the enemies deal you and just sheer tankiness of these enemies. So it's pretty tough, and I would say it's an accomplishment even if you can clear it without getting the time limit clears. And honestly, even if you can just do Lunatic or one of the easier difficulties, I still encourage you to check out this mode. I think it's something really special, and hopefully you get some enjoyment out of it. I'm not going to really be doing a budget clear for this, as I do think for Infernal, they honestly push the difficulty level to the point where it does incentivize you and reward you for actually being pretty geared out with powerful adventurers and powerful equipment. So I'm honestly not sure if I would even be able to do this. I know it probably can be done, but with my skill level, I think it would be pretty tough for me to pull it off, honestly, with a weaker power team. It was pretty challenging. So don't stress too much if you are struggling with some of this, I would say. The rewards are good, but basically it's just easier ways to obtain the universal crystals that you're getting from the event anyway by playing the defensive battles, Thor's Descent, and also getting some Wormite from this. And in particular, if you just can't do the time limit clear, that's basically 10 Wormite on every trial, total of 50 Wormite. I've never done the mentor bonuses, so in my time playing Dragalia Lost, I've lost thousands of Wormite over the course of many weeks, so I really wouldn't stress too much over it. I think you can still easily have the summoning resources that you need in order to accomplish things in the future, even if you miss a few Wormite on this. But speaking of that, a lot of you pointed out on my last summoning video a mistake I made, which I did not notice until I saw your comments and some posts over on the Discord. Didn't even notice this when I was uploading the video and editing it. But yeah, I summoned 40 times on the wrong banner, which is horrible. I also sold dragons after saying that I wasn't going to sell them, and I guess my mind just kind of blanked there, and luckily it didn't cost us, which is kind of absurd. So ultimately it was like a luck flex, I guess. We got absurdly lucky that we summoned on the wrong banner 40 times and managed to pull it together, and as it turns out, Peony, who we got at the very end, ended up being really helpful for me in my light team that we're going to show off at the end of this video. So I'm glad all of y'all pointed that out. I'm so sorry that happened. I know I yell at my screen when stuff like that happens in other people's videos. It's not the only time we've just lost a lot of value. One time I accidentally did an item summon for Wormite, which kind of sucked. And a couple times I spent the wrong amount of singles. So, you know, we've been in the gutter before, but that one was particularly bad with 40 summons. I think what happened was I went to sell some dragons, and I came back to the page, and it wasn't on the same banner that I had left it on, and I just never really caught on to that. So, pretty brutal, but all's well that ends well, I guess. Ignorance is bliss. I would not have known to even be unhappy until y'all posted. And ultimately it worked out for us, so I can't complain whatsoever. Alright, so now we're looking at our flame team up against the wind element. Of course, we have Luis and Lowen to start things off. Love the combinations here. And this time around, unfortunately, I couldn't fit Phoenix and Mikoto into my team as much as I would have liked to. I decided to go with Nobunaga because I wanted that combo time on my Azalith. And instead, I'm using Yuden for my Phoenix holder. And basically, I'm just gonna, you know, aggressively use Phoenix anytime I'm taking damage. I felt I had enough shapeshift gauge with it filling up that I could afford to use an Arctos, but I definitely was not trying to hit that zombie off to the side. I do like that they've paired Akasha with the zombies, but in my opinion, in this mode, as well as in some of the Monster Hunter modes that we had in the past with multiple enemies, landing dragon skills like Arctoses is just a total crapshoot on whether you'll actually hit or not. Ultimately, we want to spend more of our time as Phoenix, though, especially since this Yuden is going to get stronger every time he shapeshifts. But I think it's pretty cool, just the combinations of enemies they put out. It's interesting. It's actually pretty hard to deal with these enemies' patterns. It reminds me a lot of the basic dragon trials. So not the high dragons, but just like the basic dragon trials. When you're early on in the game and kind of under-geared, those are hard because the dragons don't have as many telegraphed attacks. Like, they'll just charge at you randomly, knock you down, which sets you back a lot, deals some damage, maybe causes a status. And so a lot of these moves that the adventure enemies here are doing are not as easily telegraphed. And even when they are, you might be dealing with 3, 4, maybe 10 enemies at once, to where you can't necessarily easily dodge all the patterns, and you may not have enough iframes for all the red circles and area of effects to actually protect all of your team. So you kind of have to have a pretty geared out team just to be able to afford to tank a few hits. Like, if you can actually survive a few hits, then healing becomes relevant. If you can't survive any hits, obviously at that point it doesn't matter if you have Phoenix for regen or something, because your adventurers are just dead. So we got kind of greedy here going into this Howling Meteor, like, we need a Phoenix ASAP, and luckily we were able to pull it off without getting deathless, without losing deathless. One good thing to note though is the endeavors on this don't require deathless, so don't reset just because of that. You can afford to let, I believe, 1 or 2 of your adventurers die and still get all of the endeavors, I think. So don't stress too much about that. And unfortunately, you know, if somebody dies, it can be hard to get the time limit clear, but it's still probably worth persisting and trying if this is something that you're finding to be really challenging. So last time we fought against Gala Luca and Jupiter, and now we're fighting against Gala Ronzel and Midgard Sormer. I think it's cool how they did this. All of them are a Gala unit plus a Great Worm. It just really worked out. The pattern felt complete. And then in the case of the Flame one, we're fighting against 2 Gala units in a way because of Mim being the dragon we're fighting. So yeah, ultimately, like, the flavor on this, I just felt like it was so on point. I really can't state that enough, but I do think about this in the future and wonder, like, they used up a lot of characters here. When this comes back in the future, is it going to potentially be like generic rando enemies? And I really hope not, because that would make it less fun, for sure. It might make it easier, but probably less fun. So I hope that they could at least make it so there's a few adventurers mixed in. Like, let's say the next time this comes out, it's tied to a new story, and that story has like 3 characters. Well, maybe each of the characters has a wave, and there's like a couple waves that are just generic monsters that are fiends or whatever. I would still feel like that's pretty satisfying. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do this like they have in the past. Or like, I don't know if they'll be able to do this like they're doing now with one gauntlet for each element all the time. That might be special for the Fire Emblem event. That might not necessarily be something that comes back. So now we're using my water team, and unlike with our previous team, we no longer have access to regen. So this one's a little bit scarier, but any kind of incidental healing I found to be pretty good. And so here we have our Halloween Meridimus on Gala Elisan, and I decided to go ahead and pilot her just because I'm honestly not very good at piloting any of the other 3 characters on my team. They're just more complicated because for Mitsuba and Valerio, they have all their different stances that you want to toggle between. And then for Cerise, her 4-strike is so different, and I'm still not really that great at playing her in that way compared to playing other bows. But I'm just planning on being the buff bot / healer here and letting them go to town. Their AIs are putting in good work for me. We're able to clear the first wave pretty easily. Now we have our Verica and Naveed wave, and are able to take that down. Here's where things get interesting. Water element Renee shows up all of a sudden, and she's kind of scary because she can bog you, and you can very easily die if you get bogged. So luckily she hasn't done that yet, but I see somebody go from healthy to the red, Cerise, and I decide I better heal. Everybody's taking a little bit of damage, and I know it's going to be a while before I get up my next healer, but thankfully Gala Elisan's Flame Res is also making us more tanky and kind of keeping us pretty safe here. And I don't know why I used my 3rd skill there. Probably should not have used that skill at all, but I did. Then we get to our next wave, and this time it's Lakshi and 2 androids. Kind of sad that we don't get Mascula, but at least we get her. And she actually uses patterns from her boss fight in the story, which, if you remember, there are some really devastating purple patterns that are hard to dodge because they take up so much of the screen. So she's a pretty dangerous threat here, to be honest, and I don't know why I was attacking the androids instead of her, but that's kind of just what I was doing. I wasn't thinking too clearly about it, and then I realized, okay, she has that move that probably want to get rid of her as soon as possible to avoid that. But it seemed like the AI were far enough since they were next to that other android that it didn't really affect them, and then we were able to take her out, and then pretty quickly take out her minion over there. I was kind of surprised that they had her here, and I don't remember Alex showing up, so I don't know what that's about, why they chose to include her versus Alex. Maybe it's because she was already sort of designed as a boss enemy. But now that I think about it, wasn't Alex a boss enemy at one point? I have a vivid memory of playing Alex in a boss fight, so maybe that's what I'm thinking of, where I used her against a boss. But Brunhilde and Cerise here, they don't have too much of a chance against us. We're all healthy. I'm pretty sure I can get Dragon up before anybody takes major damage. Just gonna keep buffing, and we have plenty of time to try to get the timed endeavor. That dive bomb was a little bit scary. Luckily it didn't actually hit anyone. And I just love, again, like, every wave feels unique because of the unique patterns on these enemies. It is truly such a breath of fresh air. Like, one of my frequent complaints about facility events is that you get through all the waves and then at the end you fight like a big squirrel or a big wolf or a cyclops again and again, and it doesn't feel as epic as I think it could. This actually felt epic, and the music is sweet. Like, I really, really like this mode. It has me excited about Dragalia in a way that I haven't been in a while. I've definitely been enjoying Dragalia, but this one actually got me pretty excited. So then I guess that's it for our water team clear of Flame. I did this one before I got Tiki, otherwise I would have loved to try her out here, but I didn't have her yet, so I didn't use her for this. But in my summoning video for her, I did test her out against Brunhilde. Okay, we're on to the harder ones, and we're starting with our wind team versus the water element. My wind team is a little bit unorthodox. I have Eleonora, of course, and I have Wedding Aoi, which aren't necessarily particularly good characters, but in the early waves, Wedding Aoi put in so much work. I was a little saddened to see it didn't actually carry through on this final wave, but in the earlier waves, she was causing almost all of the levels of enemies to fall asleep. And if you're not aware of this, the way they implemented the affliction resistance here is that if that character, as an adventurer, has resistance to something, they'll usually have complete immunity, 100% resistance to that in this mode. So like some of the shadow characters, you can't even paralyze them because they're 100% paralysis res. However, it looks like they also added some additional res for sleep in particular, because Wedding Aoi, once I got to Infernal difficulty, like she was missing a lot with her sleep. So I tried the same strat I was using for Lunatic first with her as a lead, and that wasn't working. So I ultimately switched to Hawk as my lead, since I figured it doesn't feel that good to me to control ranged characters in this. I do kind of like to control melee characters, but I figured I probably need to control him if I want to maximize his damage, and he is my best damage character here. So that's ultimately what I decided to go with. And Eleonora there is kind of my weakest DPS, so I gave her Freya so that she could heal us when we need healing, and we're going to need a lot of it. With all of these Pipples, this wave was pretty hard, and with Valerio and Mitsuba and their big AoE attacks, like, this got very bad here, and I definitely failed quite a few runs on this stage. And one of the things I found was Mitsuba in particular has such hit priority on her altered combos. Like if you're next to her and she's in sashimi stance and just starts doing her basic attacks on you, she's going to interrupt any basic attacks you're doing. So it's really hard to build combo if you're right next to her and actually charge up your skills. Valerio felt a little bit slower and easier to predict and dodge. Dagger enemies in general in this were surprisingly hard to deal with. Like they could dash at you, they could really hit you quick, and none more so than Floor here. Floor was my nemesis and was one of the reasons why this was so challenging. I think this is one of the hardest waves in the whole Infernal Coliseum right now, because we have Silas, who's wind element, we have Laranoa, who's water, which is favorable for us, and then we have Floor, who's light. And both Silas and Floor can afflict us and buff themselves and buff their team, respectively. So this is just a very dangerous situation, and we're probably going to use multiple Freya here to get through this. They're also super tanky. Like, I could not take down this Floor for the life of me. And I think I ended up whiffing with one of my Floor strikes at one point, which was a pretty big DPS loss. But luckily, the characters kind of lined up in a way where some of my skills were hitting multiple of them, and somehow Wedding Aoi did not die there. Again, it's really a difference of having the right gear, making sure that your characters are not getting one-shot, because then there's actually a chance to at least heal them. So all of these runs that I'm doing, my characters all have, tier 2 high dragon weapons. Not necessarily max unbound, but at least that level, and sometimes they have Agita weapons, of course. But yeah, that's kind of why I didn't want to use somebody like Noelle or Dragon Eel Xainfried for this, and I just went with Eleonora because I don't have a wand for them to use other than Chimera Tech, and that just felt a little budget. It didn't feel as exciting with like not, as big numbers or whatever. So I figured Eleanor would probably be fine, and I took a few tries, but she was fine as my heal bot / poison enabler. You saw Mercury just knock down Hawk there. That's the type of thing that happens so much in this mode. Like these small attacks that just devastate you and devastate the AI because they come out faster than the AI can actually dodge. AI is pretty good at dodging red patterns and purple patterns unless they get confused, but those really quick attacks are tough. We got extremely lucky here with how Break lined up in the debuff zone, all of our skills ready to go, Elisan and Mercury right next to each other. That was just easy prey for Hawk. So yeah, we're able to take out the water one. I still found that one to be very hard, but not quite as hard as Shadow, which is the last one we'll look at today. You probably know this by now if you're watching this video, but in the Shadow one, you face off against Ieyasu, Sazanka, and Deathless, and man, that is a tough wave. So we're using Galaluka, we're using Peony, and then we also have Mitsuhide and Vixel as our backline here. I really wanted Mitsuhide in my team comp because I was having trouble maintaining combo with Galaluka, and a lot of his DPS is dependent on keeping up a combo of 15 hits or more. But with Mitsuhide being present on my team, I got extra combo time, which really helped me. And maybe if you're more skilled than I am, you could just maintain combo without her. But even though her paralysis wasn't at its best here, just her personal DPS, with or without paralysis, was still solid. Crit rate co-ability was helpful and good on Luca, and that combo time chain co-ability was really, really nice. The first two waves are not too tough. You know, Cassandra and Audric, Yaten, and Natalie earlier didn't put up that much of a fight, and in general, whenever you can cluster the enemies together in this, it's very, very good. You could potentially break them both at once, or just land your skills on both of them. It's hard to group them up sometimes, but that can make these runs significantly easier and significantly faster. This next wave is where things start to get hard. We're going to face off against Heinwald, Curran, and Lathna. All three of them have pretty large purples that have pretty nasty effects, so you do have to be kind of careful about that. Luckily, we were able to use our skill to get out of range there and then start setting up some breaks, and I don't know if we've lost combo, but we haven't lost combo in a while, at least, with how much we've accumulated. And Peony's light damage also, her chain co-ability, or rather her co-ability of light damage, is helping us a lot. Here's where I got a little bit eccentric with my clear. I actually put Takemi Kazuchi on Mitsuhide because this is one of the light dragons, I want to say the only light dragon, or one of the few, that can cause stun. And so this wave was so difficult that I decided my best strategy is to try just stun them, lock them in place for a while, let my team just beat up on them. So I stunned once initially, and then once they all seemed to be in overdrive, I stunned again so that they couldn't move. A lot of players have taken to using Beautician Zardan to kind of achieve a similar effect, or using Annalie, and I've heard that's pretty helpful. If you are lacking a powerful light team or powerful shadow team, you might be able to use that to, at the very least, get yourself a clear. I tried it as well, but I found that my Beautician Zardan DPS just wasn't good enough to get the clear in time, and ultimately that was one of my goals. So if the timer aspect is less important to you, then just stun locking these foes for a while can be super helpful. We're still kind of in danger here, even with Addis at low HP, just because Addis bleeding one of our units, he can very easily wipe us out. And finally, we get to the last wave with Galacleo, who has somehow become an absolute tank, and Zodiark, who can curse you, which also makes it hard to clear in time. And I saw a curse icon appear, so I know at least somebody on my team has gotten cursed. And probably Vixel. I think Vixel might be the only one who doesn't have curse res here, which is actually very bad because it means we're not going to be able to heal. I use S1 in such a way that I take a lot of damage. The poison bog lingers for a long time, and it's a complete emergency situation. I panic. I just switch over to my second character, Peony, who's holding Cupid. Luckily, she's able to put in the heal, but Galaluka is still not particularly healthy. But I think if we can just get rid of this Zodiark, we'll be fine, and so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. We are really in life or death mode here, but Vixel's getting some regen ticks. Ultimately, that's why I brought Vixel, was the nice regen healing. I didn't really want to put a Freya or Phoenix on somebody, so he ended up working out pretty well. The energy chain co-ability he has isn't doing too much for us here, but just as a healer, he's so solid. And Galacleo, despite being pretty tanky, was able to be taken out just like that. So that is it for this video, everyone. Had a lot of fun narrating and just talking about the Coliseum mode. I've said it many times, but I'm very hyped about this mode. I hope that you enjoyed this video, watching through some of my clears. I'd love to hear what worked for you, what strategies you found to be effective, And I'll go ahead and post some screenshots of my teams over on Twitter. So if you want to take a look at those, check it out there. I think it's just easier to see it as an image as opposed to putting in the comments. But that is really going to do it for today. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.